Welcome to the Big Séance podcast. I'm Patrick Keller of BigSéance.com, and this is a place for an open discussion on all things paranormal, but specifically topics like ghosts and hauntings, paranormal research, spirit communication, psychics and mediums, and life after death. So basically, anything that pops up in my paranormal world. The candles are already lit, so you might as well come on in and join the Séance. Well, hello all, Patrick here. Today I wanted to keep you guessing and switch things up a bit. There is no guest, because I wanted to share a very special EVP clip with you, as well as some audio clips from a few years ago during some intensive EVP experimenting. I realize that a lot of people are mobile when they listen to podcasts. I usually am. But if at all possible, EVP are best heard when using headphones. I also want to mention that even though there is nothing frightening about the clips I'll be sharing with you, it could be a bit creepy or scary to someone not accustomed to hearing these types of things. So if you're a little jumpy or sensitive, just don't listen in the dark or right after watching The Exorcist, for example. With that being said, my attention is not to freak anyone out, as EVP is a positive thing for me, so you'll be fine. I just wanted to give you a heads up. I'm assuming most people tuning in would at least be a little familiar with EVP, which is electronic voice phenomenon, or phenomena if it's plural, which is kind of a pet peeve of mine. And these are just unexplained spirit voices captured on any electronic recording device. Most of the audio clips I'm going to share with you today, and there are many, are actually not EVP at all, but documentation of what may be spirit rapping in my home over the course of 3 different sessions on different days. I often refer to these sessions as my visits from a rapper on the blog. No, Jay-Z hasn't been dropping by for visits, but if you're familiar with the early days of spiritualism, or the story of the famous Fox sisters, you know what I'm talking about by rapping. I'm talking about unexplained knocking or tapping coming from the walls, ceiling, or other surfaces that seem significant and happen as if they are, perhaps, a spirit responding to questions. But I wanted to start off with my very first and most favorite EVP. In 2010, after a lot of research and preparation and spending a lot of money, I bravely formed my own paranormal investigation group with my family. We had a lot of fun and had some really great experiences. Our very first EVP, which I still consider to be one of my best examples, was captured in what was only our second paranormal investigation. Where was the investigation? Well, it was in a church, and we investigated on 2 different occasions. And one of the things that made these experiences so very cool is that the church was open to the investigation and learning about the activity that goes on there. How many churches do you know that are that cool? I was even invited to present our evidence over a kind of potluck fellowship supper. And on that night, I shared the EVP that I'm about to share with you. Here's some background. We were spending some time in the fellowship hall of the church, which is located in the basement. The human voice that you will hear is mine, and I was doing an EMF sweep and talking about the readings. The following is taken directly from the investigation report. EMF readings were reading from 0.1 to 0.5 milligauss, with the higher readings being on the opposite side of the kitchen. In this audio file from the Sony ICD PX820 digital audio recorder, our biggest piece of evidence is heard. You will hear me talking about the EMF readings on the opposite side of the kitchen, followed by a strange noise, which was then unidentified, followed by what we feel is definitely spirit communication. Okay, here's the original and unenhanced version of the EVP. I'll play it twice for you.
Side of the fellowship hall, opposite of the kitchen, it's higher numbers. And then you go to the center, it's like side of the fellowship hall, opposite of the kitchen, it's higher numbers. And then you go to the center, it's like
Now, some of you may have easily heard that, With the other noises going on in the room at the moment, it may be hard for some to pick out. There's debate about the louder mechanical sound that happens before the voice, but it has remained my opinion that this was a sound coming from the kitchen on the other side of the room. Others have heard a message from what I consider to be the mechanical sounds. Now let me play the same clip for you with noise reduction. Again, I'll play it twice.
Side of the fellowship hall, opposite of the kitchen, it's higher numbers. And then you go to the center, it's like side of the fellowship hall, opposite of the kitchen, it's higher numbers. And then you go to the center, it's like...
What do you think? Do you hear it more easily? Are you hearing a message? Well, now I'll keep the noise reduction and amplify the section with the voice for you. And again, I'll play it twice.
Side of the fellowship hall, opposite of the kitchen, it's higher numbers. And then you go to the center, it's like side of the fellowship hall, opposite of the kitchen, it's higher numbers. And then you go to the center, it's like...
And finally, keeping the noise reduction and amplification, I'll now slow down the voice for you. Here it is, twice.
Side of the fellowship hall, opposite of the kitchen, it's higher numbers. And then you go to the center, it's like side of the fellowship hall, opposite of the kitchen, it's higher numbers. And then you go to the center, it's like...
Now I'm again reading directly from the investigation report. The same moment is recorded on the ICD PX720 digital audio recorder placed on the floor in the center of the fellowship hall for the entire investigation, as well as the Sony HDR CX150 camcorder. Both devices pick up the strange noise, the mechanical sound mentioned before, but not the EVP picked up on the ICD PX820. Okay, here's the same moment from the audio recorder. Notice the same mechanical sound, minus the voice.
So on this side of the fellowship hall, opposite of the kitchen, it's higher numbers. And as you go to the center, it's like... So on this side of the fellowship hall, opposite of the kitchen, it's higher numbers. And as you go to the center, it's like...
Some people, including me, believe the theory that if you have more than one recording of the same moment and what you're identifying as an EVP is picked up in one recording and not another, it just may increase its validity. So what message did you hear? Some people hear, "It's cold." And the fact that just a few moments before, actually, which is not on the audio clip, I had mentioned getting chills, gives some backing to "It's cold." Others hear, "This is Paul," or "It's Paul." What do you think? Well, after this investigation, I sent the clips to friend and medium Marilyn Painter. She gives us her thoughts on the EVP and claimed to hear "My God," which I believe is the part that I identify as the mechanical sound, and then "It's all over me." You of course have to be careful of the power of suggestion and forcing yourself to hear particular messages, but I now at least hear "It's all over," and if there's a "me," it trails off before I hear it. Since then, the EVP itself has become known as "It's all over me." I've included the link to the full investigation report, including more of what Marilyn picked up on, in the show notes. Now, cut to 2 years later, 2012. The more I researched the paranormal, and the more books I read, I became intensely interested in EVP and other spirit communication topics in general. This led to the blog at bigseance.com, which of course led to the podcast you're listening to now. Research from people like the late Sarah Estep, Tom and Lisa Butler of the Association Transcommunication, formerly the American Association of EVP, encouraged me to embark on a 2-week intensive EVP experiment, which is linked at the top of bigseance.com. It was an incredibly time-consuming and also tiring experiment. However, it was rewarding. After the Butlers learned of my experiment, my report was included in the summer 2012 News Journal of the Association Transcommunication. Part of the experiment was frustrating, with every day requiring at least a few hours for both the session and the analysis. And there were many days where, after all of the time spent on analysis, I came up with nothing paranormal at all. It took until day 6 to capture what I considered to be an EVP, which said, "Beautiful." I had such high hopes for the rest of the experiment, but it was hit and miss until the second to the last day of the 2-week experiment. Here's a segment from that report. It wasn't until day 13, March 25th, that I recorded anything of interest again, and it was probably the most interesting session out of the entire 2-week experiment. Like the Fox sisters I'd read so much about, I ended up having an entire conversation through a series of pronounced knocks and taps. It was incredibly exciting, and I posted almost the whole 22 minutes of transcript on the blog with several audio clips. Now I'm going to read mostly from my notes and report from this session, and include several clips, all repeated twice. I use the terms knock and tap pretty much interchangeably, and a few of them are clearly very soft. For time purposes, I have decided to edit out some portions of the empty space in the audio, where there's a delay before a response. I always try to add a soft tone in those places so that you know exactly where the cut is. Also, some of my responses, because I was so excited, are kind of funny, so don't make fun of me. So let's get to my rapper friend's first visit. 30 seconds into the session and the recording, there was a knock before I even said anything. At 1 minute and 24 seconds, there was a tap after I asked, "Can you tell me your name?" I then asked, "Is that you making that noise?" No response. After a few questions and getting no response, I asked, "Have you been present with me before in one of these sessions?" I received 2 loud and clear taps. The first one further away, and the second one closer to the recorder. "Can you tell me your name?" "Is that you making that noise?" "Can you make another noise if that was you?" Like 2 pops in a row, maybe, or 2 knocks. "Have you been present with me before in one of these sessions?" Ooh, 2 knocks. Is that the 2 knocks I was looking for? Thank you. Can you tell me your name? And is that you making that noise? Can you make another noise if that was you? Like 2 pops in a row, maybe, or 2 knocks. "Have you been present with me before in one of these sessions?" Ooh, 2 knocks. Is that the 2 knocks I was looking for? Thank you. At 2 minutes and 35 seconds, I asked if they could give me 2 more knocks just for validation. I got 2 taps 15 seconds later. Do you think you'd be able to do 2 knocks again just for validation? 2 more knocks? Then we really could have a conversation. There's one. There's two. Thank you. Do you think you'd be able to do two knocks again, just for validation? 2 more knocks? Then we really could have a conversation. There's one. There's two. Thank you. I then decided that 1 knock was going to mean yes, and 2 knocks was a no. I asked, "Have you been with me in one of these EVP sessions before in the last couple of weeks?" And 15 seconds later, there was a faint, unidentified noise in the background, followed by a tap. Have you been with me in one of these EVP sessions before in the last couple of weeks? Thank you. Have you been with me in one of these EVP sessions before in the last couple of weeks? Thank you. I asked a few questions with no responses, and then at 5 minutes and 50 seconds, there was another tap while I was in the middle of a rather long question. I was asking for them to pass on a message, tell me who they are, etc. After the tap, I finished my question and also asked where they were talking to me from. The other side? No response. But 16 seconds later, there was a tap. At 6 minutes and 30 seconds, I said, "You seem to be good at the knocking thing. Can you tell me, are you male?" For several seconds, there was no response. I continued, "Maybe that's no." Immediately, there was a tap. I then asked, "Are you female?" No response. At 8 minutes and 17 seconds, I was at a normal part of my session where I would play music softly in the background. I asked, "How many of you are with me?" At 8 minutes and 34 seconds, you could hear a very loud knock from somewhere in the house. How many people are with me now? How many of you are with me? How many people are with me now? How many of you are with me? A couple of minutes went by during a portion of the experiment where I used pink noise, a kind of white noise in the background. I actually captured 2 possible EVP during this part, but I'm not confident enough in either of them to share them here. At 12 minutes and 32 seconds, after the pink noise was turned off, I asked, "Are you still there?" 10 seconds later, there was a knock. I think I'll let you jump right into this next one without describing it first. This is 12 minutes and 53 seconds into the session. I've been asking for the presence of Sarah Estep or Kathy. Oh. Sarah, is that you? I've been asking for the presence of Sarah Estep or Kathy. Oh. Sarah, is that you? Over the next few minutes, there were a few questions with very faint taps, followed by a few questions with no responses. At 16 minutes and 4 seconds, I asked, "So could this knocking be from Sarah?" No response. At 16 minutes and 18 seconds, I threw out another name. Kathy? 13 seconds later, there was some kind of knock in the room. I tried for a while to verify that it was Kathy, but got no responses. At 17 minutes and 5 seconds, I asked, "Are you someone other than Sarah or Kathy? Could you knock if you're someone else?" After a few seconds, there were 2 faint knocks that I acknowledged hearing in the recording. I'm not sure if this was the answer of no, or if this was an entity just knocking in response to my question in general. Then a loud knock happened at 21 minutes and 2 seconds as I began to close the session. You can hear a dog barking in the background. Well, I want to thank you for your energy. Oh. Thank you. There's one. Well, I want to thank you for your energy. Oh. Thank you. There's one. Right before ending the session in this recording, my elbow popped, and I had a good laugh. Well, that's all from the very first visit from my rapper friend. He did not return the next day for the final session of my official EVP experiment, but he definitely returned a week or two later in the next session I'm going to talk about. The following knock or tap was recorded at 11 minutes and 38 seconds into this new session. If you can do that again, we can begin to communicate. All right, thank you. If you can do that again, we can begin to communicate. All right, thank you. After asking about the level of difficulty with knocking 2 times in a row and getting no responses, I asked, "Can you do the one knock again? Just one knock by itself?" As you'll hear, naturally, my rapper decided to respond with 2 knocks. Can you do the one knock again, just one by itself? Alright, that was 2. Can you do the one knock again, just one by itself? Alright, that was 2. At 16 minutes and 6 seconds, I captured what are possibly 2 quick soft taps after the question, "Give me 2 knocks if you have not attempted to speak with me." 2 minutes later, I got a response of 1 tap after asking the question, "Have I known you ever in my life?" After another 2 minutes, I got the loudest 2 knocks from the whole session. After asking, "What can you tell me about your family?" I had pink noise playing in the background. What can you tell me about your family? Thank you. What can you tell me about your family? Thank you. At 23 minutes and 39 seconds, I made the suggestion that perhaps they could touch me, since they had the ability to knock on things. I got a reply of 1 knock, and as far as I know, that's when he made his quiet exit. It is quite possible, however, that my rapper may have made 1 final visit during a session a month later. There were several responses in this session, but I couldn't hold back my excitement when a little more than 6 minutes in, I asked, "Is there any way you can give me 2 pretty big knocks just before I leave, just to validate that you were here today? 2 loud knocks." Check out the response I got. 2 loud knocks? Two loud knocks? So it was in this session that I decided to take advantage of Mr. Rapper's visit and step up my game. I decided to go down the alphabet old school, like Kate and Maggie Fox often did. Maybe this rapper would spell out a name to help identify him or her. I went slowly through the alphabet and allowed the rapper to knock after the first letter of their first name. I got a knock after B. I asked for a knock to verify that B was correct, and unfortunately I didn't get one. Now I made the attempt to identify the second letter of the first name. We went all the way through the alphabet again, and I didn't hear a significant knock. We then tried it again for the initial of the last name, But before we started, I asked if they were still with me and asked for a knock. I didn't receive a response. I started through the alphabet anyway, and when I got to B again, I got several little taps or crackles in response. I asked if it was accurate that the initial of their last name was B, and if they were a BB. No response. So I decided to try again for a second initial. No B this time around. I continued on and got a tap after calling H. There were no other responses or validation, and I gave up for the day. Does my rapper have the initials of BB or BH? Was I only talking to creaking walls that mysteriously only creak when I ask them to? Now let me say something about all of these rapper clips. I have had almost 6 years now to get used to the environment that is my house. Any home will have a unique signature of creaks and pops and noises. It's all character. In my house, I can sometimes predict them, depending on if the shower has been used recently, if I walk into the guest bedroom, if it's windy outside, etc. But only in these 3 sessions, and not since then, have any of the pops and taps so clearly been in response to questions, and sometimes 2 in a row, and some extremely loud. Is it a situation where I'm only hearing things because I'm listening for them? Possibly. But I could sit here for an hour or 2 today and wait for an accidental and completely random tap or a pop and maybe never hear one. I've tried it. I actually just heard one a couple of minutes ago. If you follow my posts or know anything about my experiments, you know that it is incredibly tough to tie me down and force me to say that anything is 100% paranormal. I don't have a lot of for sure EVP because I doubt so much of it, but I also apparently have a house that just doesn't draw in too many spirit friends. And I'm learning that doubting a little evidence is okay, but I don't beat myself up trying to figure out if it's one thing or another anymore. If it's black or white. I'm openly skeptic and critical of most audio evidence, especially if I wasn't there. But again, that's okay, because it doesn't have to be validated by me or anyone else. And really, there is no way to validate it. Think about it. Consider accepting these clips as something I've recently been learning to accept, and that is this. That they're just interesting samples and examples of what could possibly be very cool paranormal activity. You can find more on all 3 of these noisy visits by visiting my post titled, My Rapper Missing You Old Friend, and I'll include it in the show notes. Oh, look! We've got listener feedback! Hey guys, me again. For our listener comments, I just wanted to share some really cool things. Actually, right before this recording, I found out that iTunes just listed the podcast as a top podcast. And I don't know a lot about that list, but I know that we weren't on that list before. And so that's very cool. And I want to thank any listeners that may have helped to make that happen. So thank you. I also wanted to share some awesome comments that were submitted about the blog and the podcast over at topparanormalsites.com this month. There were 2 comments. One says, new and exciting. Love, love, love. 3 loves, wow. The next one says, this blog is very entertaining. I enjoy reading the honest, humorous, and interesting topics. Can't wait to read more. Love the 3rd podcast the best. And that episode was our really fun conversation with Amy Wilder. If you haven't listened to that, you should check it out. If you're interested in rating Big Séance on top paranormal sites, you can find the link if you scroll down just a bit on the right at bigseance.com. We're quite frequently ranked as one of the top 20 paranormal sites over there, which is really cool. So thanks for those comments. Also, I just wanted to take this opportunity to ask that you help me to grow our listenership by sharing the podcast with a friend, either through social media or perhaps an email. I'm excited about where the Big Séance podcast can go, but I'm going to need your help to get it out there. So can you do that for me? A little homework for the week? Consider sharing this or one of the episodes on your Facebook wall. your Twitter, etc., or with someone you think would love such nerdiness. And one last thing, Jim Harold, my professor of podcasting, just released a Dreams Interpreted paranormal podcast. It's number 343. And fortunately, Jim allowed me to come on and talk about a really cool dream that I had and have it interpreted by J.M. DeBoard. So check that out, and thanks for that really cool opportunity, Jim. Well, let me know what you thought about this episode, since I changed it up and went without a guest. This kind of thing would probably never be the norm, but I'm considering throwing in something like this occasionally. Let me know. We're back to having guests next week. Next up is kind of a follow-up discussion from a 2-part interview I had early this summer with author Victoria Cosner Love. We talk more about the mystery, myths, and facts about Madame Delphine Lalaurie. Only this time we talk on the podcast. And in 2 weeks, we talk more EVP with EVP researcher Randall Keller. You won't want to miss either of these. So make sure you're subscribed to either the podcast on iTunes or at bigseance.com. Either one will keep you tuned in to new episodes. Thanks, everyone. Catch you next time. For show notes, including links to anything we may have mentioned in this episode, visit bigseance.com, now the home of both the blog and the podcast. Just click on the Big Seance Podcast logo or find it in the menu. You can also find and subscribe to the show on iTunes. Do you have any comments or thoughts? Please contact me at patrick@bigseance.com. I could decide to include them in a future show. Thank you so much for listening and reading. Unfortunately, it's time to blow the candles out, but we'll see you and light them again next time.